because now we need to check in with the All Whites, who they did lose 3-0 to Mexico, and you had a nice. I'm trying to find it, but I don't know if I can. In the newsletter yesterday via Substack, thenichecache.substack.com. Here you go. The Ferns seem to be getting ripped for all of this, whereas the All Whites don't, but it feels like the blokes are catching up in the bad reputation stakes. Not sure how to feel about it, to be honest. Accountability is good. Permanent negativity around our national teams is bad. Somewhere in between is the zone of productivity. And that seems relevant, pertinent after the 3-0 loss to Mexico. Because as you also suggest, highlighted in the newsletter, New Zealand's ranked 94th in the world right now, and Mexico is 17th. So maybe our positivity is just insane. Because like the straight up and down rankings of it all, Mexico's 17th right now via FIFA, and USA is 16th. So there's literally no grounds for me to be optimistic about a win over the USA for New Zealand. Like, it's just me having a giggle, to be honest. Like, haha, we might beat the USA. Ooh. But straight up and down, USA is ranked 16th in the world. Mexico's ranked 17th in the world. And it's the same for the football fans, where they're usually losing and rolling out kind of mediocre performances against better teams, but there is this expectation, whether it's from footballing folk, whether it's from non-footballing folk, there is an expectation for New Zealand to do something in international footy. And by do something, I literally mean do something, like score some goals, have some fun, get a draw, get a win maybe, just do something cool. Because usually, unless they're beating up on weaker opponents, they don't do much cool stuff. Like, there's no razzle-dazzle footy. There's no just entertainment, really, to be honest. But those are some bigger picture ideas that we need to kind of wait to see how the USA game goes. What did you make of the loss to Mexico?
Well, I mean, you remember the football ferns did win a game at the World Cup last year, and then after the World Cup everyone talked about what a disappointment it was because they didn't get out of their group stage. It's like, well, they did one thing they'd never ever done before, that no New Zealand senior team, they always have one game. They've been to 2 World Cups, they didn't win any of those games. We celebrated the time they got 3 draws at a World Cup, which and rightfully, like, that, it sounds like a punchline, but that was actually a great achievement. That was cool as they didn't lose any of those games. But yeah, that thing about expectations does seem that's something that I'm trying to reckon with at the moment. Is like, what we want to see a national team that improves on what we've seen from them in the past, because they just seem to have a better, stronger, deeper team, like squad of players to be able to choose from, men and women. This applies to football ferns as much as the All Whites, and that's one of the things. Another thing I'm reckoning with is the ways in which the All Whites have just become the football ferns. And I think that reputation is catching up with that. And for a long time, I've been talking about how it's unfair the way the football ferns get talked about. And the last year or two, I've started pointing out, well, actually, they always kind of do the same stuff and don't get the same critique. But now I think we're getting to where they're getting the same critique as well. They've just become the same entity. The only difference yet is I haven't heard people complaining about the All Whites picking the same players, even though they don't. The way that the football ferns was the case. I guess at least people are in a little bit more acknowledgement that the All Whites are bringing through a younger generation, whereas the football ferns did it a little bit more subtly and then still got criticized for not doing it, even though they were doing that. Is another thing I've been writing about for a while. Well, they're not sure on narratives, these two national teams.
Ooh, don't like the word narrative, so you might need to update that.
Not sure on storylines.
Now, for some reason, I hate the word narrative because it's literally the only word people use.
Cliche at this point. Yes, I agree.
What you're saying about the football ferns there sounds exactly the same as the Black Caps. Like, while people were complaining about the Black Caps being too old, they were literally
Yeah.
integrating younger players into their system, and then to the point where they gave more opportunities to young players, and people started complaining about there not being enough older players.
Why'd you get rid of Neil Wagner for?
Exactly. So it's this weird, I don't know, that seems like a force that we are constantly battling up against, is like the perception and reality of these teams. And it's pretty deep in the football ranks at the moment, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, the football ferns don't have Ria Percival anymore. They don't have Abiosig anymore. They look at play like Hannah Wilkinson got dropped for the Olympics. Ali Riley is battling injuries and might have played her last international games. We don't know yet. Like there's a Betsy Hassett wasn't around. Like there's a Annalie Longo hardly played at the Olympics. There's a lot of these players. Erin Naylor's not in the picture anymore. Like there's so many of them. But I'll also point out that the results haven't got better or worse. It's kind of the same, you know. Moving on to, and maybe that's what people wanted to see, was at least try something, get some younger players in. But also, the younger players aren't necessarily going to make you better from day one. That takes a little bit of time. And as I always say with the Ferns, and it's true with the All Whites, like the development happens at their clubs. It's just about getting as many players with good clubs as possible, and hope that falls back into the national team. The All Whites feel like they're ahead of the football ferns in that kind of just that process, but we've not seen anything results wise. Like they've had one win under Darren Baisley. It was against China in his second game in charge. It's a nice win. Like, it was a good solid win. That Chinese team was pretty terrible, but they got a draw and a win. They were the only home games I think they've played under Baisley, because they haven't even. Well, they will have some more later on this year. We are playing Malaysia in the next international window. Got a home game against Malaysia, and then one of our World Cup qualifiers, and there's another window later in the year which will be more World Cup qualifiers. So losing 3-0 to Mexico, the result doesn't. You know, who cares? They're way better than us. Like, of course, they're way better than us. The rankings tell you that. Normal logic tells us that. You know, their country is way bigger. They have way more footballers. They have a much stronger league. They go to World Cups and they make knockout rounds at World Cups. They're just the history is on their side. Like, just everything points towards Mexico is way better than us at football. We shouldn't be upset about losing to them. And I'm not upset about losing them. I am a little bit upset about just the fact that I'm not seeing a lot of ideas out there. You know, we know they have this problem about struggling with creativity, but even with the football ferns, with their struggles with creativity, at least you got ideas of what they were trying to do to get around that. Like, there was a lot of wing play, I think, with the ferns is something that they've been trying to get going. Set pieces have been a strategy. I mean, the All Whites just sort of, I don't know, there's been talk since they started bringing in they sort of had a refresh of the squad around the COVID time, because that's just a lot of things had refreshes, because you had a couple years where there just weren't international games. So when you come back, it's a little bit of a reset button. And there's a lot of talk since then about how they're playing better football and wanting to be a team that passes around more. But then also, some of the goals they conceded against Mexico were pretty brittle, and they were going to concede one way or another because they were just under a lot of pressure against a better team. But like, I don't know. I've got similar vibes about the under-20 women's team at the World Cup as well, where it's like this team cruised through Oceania qualifying, scoring so many goals and looking like one of the best attacking teams we've seen in age grade levels with some of the players that they had there, especially once they added Millie Clegg as well for the World Cup itself. But they couldn't get to that point because their defense wasn't very good. And that's always been such a even though they got good players, that was the weird thing. They got good defenders. I think physically there was a bit of an aspect there with that team, that under-20s women's team, was they weren't as good athletically as some of the teams they played. They weren't, so they were getting beaten by speedy wingers and running in behind. They just can't keep up the pace, or a lot of set plays, aerial stuff where they're not winning their headers because they're just a little bit shorter or not as strong as their opponents. Some of that stuff. The strength and size shouldn't apply to the All Whites. I do think maybe they have a bit of that Warriors lack of pace about them, is true, but they I don't know. It's just I'm not seeing a lot of solutions to issues there because they're not even necessarily playing to the strengths that they have in the team, which I guess is the point to make. And the football fans I think have done the same thing as well. They're trying to build up from the back a little bit more, trying to be more courageous, more uh, just aggressive with their passing, but um, at the same time, you can't lose the thing that is their reputation worldwide, which is that they are going to be a physical team. They're going to be defensively stacked. They're going to be difficult to break down, and you're going to know you're in a battle when you're playing against the football ferns. I remember when America came here last year, a lot of the American players were talking about this. I'm like, this is America. They don't even have to give us like they've been the best women's team. We caught them actually on a little bit of a dip there, but they seem to be back now after winning the Olympics. They have a very good coach, so that always helps. Um, Perhaps that's an idea to come back to around the All and Football Ferns is the idea of coaching. It might be an aspect to consider. Although I'm not, I'm reserving judgment to some extent on some of those things. I'm not sure how much of it is coaching, but I am starting to think with the All Whites it might be a little bit. There might be something that's holding them back a little bit. Even though I don't know. My idea with international football is simplicity is better. Just having a simple game plan. You don't have time to get complicated about things anyway. You barely have time to train together. And someone like Baisley, who's just a well-liked guy, he won't try to do too much. He'll just set the guys up, let them take some control over how they want to play as well, and just wind them up and let them loose. Is normally the better aspect for international coaching, but they're a little bit lacking in imagination at the moment, the Always. But these games against Mexico and USA aren't necessarily the ones. If we don't beat Malaysia at home, I think that's where we start thinking, okay, we got some problems. But yeah, I can't remember what the other point I was going to make about it. About playing to their strengths and stuff. Like that's the identity, and that was definitely the identity of the football ferns that the American side were mentioning. Is like if they've taken note of it, they don't have to take note of the football ferns. They could just turn up and win without doing much scouting at all. They're better in that way, like to that extent. But they've noticed a reputation there. They've noticed some kind of pattern. So if that's taken hold, that's the kind of thing you kind of want to keep that around. And when the All Whites went to the 2010 World Cup, it's Ryan Nelson and Winston Reid and Simon Elliott and Ivan Vislic and guys like this. Like that was their identity too. Is they were going to win those 50 tackles. They were going to be defensively solid. They were going to do all that stuff. I'm not sure we've got that to the same extent with the All Whites. And I wonder with the All Whites and football fans if maybe they're in a counterintuitive way. Maybe they're trying to play a little bit too much football, which isn't the problem so much as you can't do that at the expense of this existing identity. You got to do that alongside this because there's room for that as well. You can be a strong, dominant passing team who also crunches blokes and tackles. You can do those things. But these are just ideas I'm pondering, thinking about this after watching the All Whites lose to a much better team. So it's really not the time to be making exaggerated conclusions or anything. It's probably best just to jot these things down, think about them, but we'll wait for more evidence before we snap into stuff.
You talked around the US women's national team observations about the football fans. Like, do you have anything specific there?
Well, I think they're not throwing out specific ideas. I just remember there being a focus on them saying being a little bit diplomatic after winning 5-0.
Yeah.
What do you think of the contest? It's like, well, regardless of the score, we know a team like New Zealand is always going to give us a battle. It's going to be tough. They're going to work hard. They're going to make us earn it. That kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like physicality, work rate. We might not be better footballers, but we will at least throw out 100% effort and make you work. You're not gonna get anything for free. I'm seeing both teams at the moment conceding not a lot of goals. Defensively, they're still pretty good, and I think the football ferns actually, we saw at the World Cup, they were defensively outstanding, so they can peak for the occasion. But I think we've seen both senior national teams conceding some softies in recent times, which is not a trend you need to see continuing, really.
Sounds like they don't have an identity, which is the same issue that the Black Caps have, same issue
Yeah,
that the White Ferns have. So that's a key
but
aspect of.
like those teams, there is an identity there. They're just not quite embracing it. Like there's a blueprint. You just gotta, don't forget where that blueprint is.
Yeah, it is weird because the Black Caps were uber successful playing like super duper Kiwis, and what you're saying about the All Whites, they were pretty damn successful playing like super duper Kiwis, as
Yeah.
limited as it was in a footballing sense. That's how they were relatively successful. You shared a all's well because Canelo Alvarez was at the game.
Yeah.
And you shared a nice little screenshot of Canelo Alvarez next to Michael Boxall and the Mexican captain and the officials there. You also shared a nice screenshot of Julius Halaifanua
Hmm.
standing next to Stephen Adams, and I'd say he's maybe an inch taller than Stephen Adams.
I think maybe even two. He's and looks for like a 17-year-old, whatever he is. He's bulkier than Stephen Adams was at that age. That dude is a unit, and that photo, which was from Stephen Adams, shared it himself on his Instagram. That could be a famous photo in a few years, if Halafanua goes on to do similar things as what so he goes on to follow the pathway that Stephen Adams has sort of carved out ahead of him. That is going to be a photo that we look back on and be like, there's the past and the present, or the present and the future as it is currently. Like that was a cool image, and I also noticed he tagged it in Georgetown University, where Hello Fanua is going to be attending this year, even though he was named in the FIBA Under-18s Asia Cup squad, and he still is on that squad and getting DMPs on the thing. He seems to just be in a completely different country. So I think that explains why he wasn't popping up for that for the junior Tall Blacks and the Asia Cup Under-18s. But they did actually get thrashed by Australia this morning. But that team was awesome, carrying on just a trend of New Zealand age grade basketball teams doing really well at these tournaments this year. They were crushing teams on the way to their final, finished second at the Asia Cup. They only need to make the semis to qualify for the Under-19 World Cup, which is happening next year. They made it all the way to the final. Second time they made the final of this competition. They were thrashed by Australia, but Australia just dominated everybody at that tournament. They were winning by like more than double the score of their opponents. So no shame there. They were the second best team, and they were fantastic throughout. Who Have you got the thing there? I think it was Kata Hopoi and Tama Isaac were the two standout players scoring most of their points. So Tama Isaac actually would have seen a little bit playing for Canterbury in the Sales NBL this season, where he was pretty good in a bench role for a player who's still playing under 18s international basketball, and his older brother Kaya Isaac just signed as a development player for the Breakers this season.
Let's swing back to the football, where the Phoenix have made a couple of signings. They apparently upgraded Matt Sheridan and Alby Kelly Heald from scholarships to full professional deals. What do you make of those moves?
Well, I don't know why Matt Sheridan got the big focus on all the promo stuff about it. It's like, we've upgraded Matt Sheridan to a senior contract. Oh, and by the way, Alby Kelly Heald too. Like, Alby Kelly Heald is probably going to be the backup goalkeeper. So I've been predicting that one for a while, especially once they signed Dublin Boone to a scholarship contract. It's like, we don't need two scholarship goalies with only one on a senior deal. Like, you might as well give Alby a contract that reflects his status in the squad. So that has happened as expected. I didn't necessarily see Sheridan getting the same gig, but there you go. He's pretty much same as Kelly Heald, has set himself up as the backup to Oluwaseyi, the new English import goalkeeper. Same as he's the backup there. Matt Sheridan has probably emerged as the backup to Tim Payne at right back. He got a few appearances last season, a couple, I think he made one start, maybe a couple off the bench. Didn't play a lot, but he seems like a player who's got yeah, big reps within the club, like a lot of these top scholarship academy type guys that are coming through. There's a lot of players that they seem to have singled out and be like, yeah, these are the good these guys are talents who we see progressing into the A-League. And this is how that's supposed to go, right? Is they elevate a couple guys every year, they sell a couple guys, they replace them with a couple more fellas. So great work from Sheridan and Alby Kelly Heald getting their contracts upgraded. There was a note as well in the Phoenix press release about that, the article on the website about how like the Springs, that doesn't change their number of players. They're still at 22 because they were both on scholarship deals. No, they're both on professional deals. But there was a note about how they have, I think it's 18 of their 22 players on full pro contracts and 4 scholarship players, which I don't think is true. They have 22 players, but I had them counted as 5 scholarship players, and they've just upgraded 2 of them. So I think either that's a typo or maybe there will, well, whether it's a typo or not, there will have to be another 4. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to have 4 scholarship players at a minimum. So someone else is going to be stepping up and replacing that. And that'll be quite interesting to see, because there are quite a few little candidates who could be the next one up from the academy. I would imagine they probably go towards a defender because their scholars, as it is, they've got 2 attacking players, Brooks Smith and Sloan Rodriguez, and they've got a goalkeeper in Dublin Boone. So I'd imagine you probably want a defender. Maybe Dylan Gardner might be an option. Jaden Smith, Seth Karuna-Ratne. Like, this is what I'm saying is there's no shortage of candidates who might be contending. There were about 4 or 5 other players who were involved in that Australian Cup squad without scholarship or senior contracts. So it's not like there's I'd say it's next man up, but it's not like there's one next man. There's a queue there for a bunch of players who might be in contention for those scholarship gigs, which just goes to show how much the Wellington Phoenix Academy is doing what it says on the tin. Like they're bringing through very good players, they're coaching them to a high degree, and they're coaching them in a way that's compatible with them going into A-League football. A lot of these guys spend a lot of time training with the first team throughout the off season and throughout the season itself. So the transition doesn't seem to be too rough, especially when you got a coach like Chiefy who's very much about making those kind of integrations.
And of course, the dual Japanese signings got their first dose of Kiwi media, so it was cool to see. We also had the cup finals this weekend, and you've got 2 little nuggets here that I find interesting. Auckland United, Kate Sheppard Cup final champions. Kate Sheppard Cup winners, sorry. Auckland United women have played Western Springs 4 times this season, and they have won 1-0 on every occasion. Charlotte Roach has scored the only goal in 3 of those 4 games. So shout out to her. Shout out to Auckland United, Kate Sheppard Cup champions. And your Chatham Cup note is Paul Eiffel and assistant Ikau Kwainu has won the Chatham Cup as a manager in consecutive years with a different team each time. First with Christchurch United and then with Wellington Olympic. On both occasions, his team conceded a stoppage time goal to force extra time, and then they won on penalties. So Wellington Olympic are Chatham Cup final winners. Keep wanting to say champions. Don't know if that works in the football world. And
Chatham Cup champs, yeah, why not?
And Auckland United are Kate Sheppard Cup champions with plenty of divine alignment in those 2 performances by the looks of it.
Yeah, a little bit crazy how some of that stuff just kind of happens in this like in this almost scripted pattern. The Auckland United, despite the fact that they've had these close wins against Western Springs, who are pretty, they're a National League side as well. They're a very strong team. They're good defensively. They've got a lot of good veterans in there. They make it tough. But Auckland United have gone undefeated through the whole season to this point. They are the best women's team in the country. They're reigning National League champions. They are going to be the team on the pedestal that everyone else is trying to topple when the National League kicks off in a couple of weeks. I don't necessarily see anyone beating them, but some of that might depend, because what if Chloe Knott or Saskia Vosper get another gig in the A-League or something? You know, some of these players might not necessarily be there. There is the Under-20 World Cup's just finished. I can't remember if Auckland United had any players in there or not, but the Western Springs did. There is an Under-17 World Cup that will clash a little bit with this. I don't think that'll affect the sort of top line of any of the teams, but there will be players from those teams who are playing. Well, the Phoenix maybe a little bit more so than others, but there will be players from those teams who will be getting National League minutes throughout the season as well. So, this Auckland United is just a bit of a dynasty at this point. They've won everything. They won the Oceania Champions League. They won the NRFL Premiership. They won last year's National League. They've won the Kate Sheppard Cup this year. If they win the National League again, they'll have won 4 trophies, which is, I think, something that only Auckland City men have done in the past. I think 2022 they won all 4 of those competitions. There's the regional league, the national league, the Oceania Champions League, and the National Cup. So they're just a step above. They're a really just a stacked team full of talent. They've got players who have played at higher levels. They've also got very good young players on their way up, and few of the players in that team that we saw in the Kate Sheppard Cup final probably quite unlucky to miss out on the Under-20 World Cup squad. Charlotte Roach would have been one of them. Alexis Cook would have been another one. Players like Renee Wasi, Danielle Canham have played age group internationals before. They've got a solid backline. Players like Chelsea Elliott, Talisha Green, and Greg McIntosh, and I remember who played. Saskia Voss played left back, so that's not a bad addition to be able to chuck in there. They actually had Michaela Foster pop by for a couple of games during the season as well. A little bit more to stay fit ahead of the Olympics, which was probably important. It actually sounds now like she won't be going back to the Phoenix, which is what I had expected. It hasn't happened yet. And now the word is maybe she's popping over to Europe for a contract, which I find quite exciting, because there is an opportunity at left back for the Football Ferns, because Ellie Riley won't be playing much longer. She might not even be playing again. And it's just a bit, there's like 4 or 5 players who've been getting left back minutes who are in contention there. Like Foster is one of them. Grace Neville's more of a right back, but she can play left back. She's playing in the English Championship with London City Lionesses. Liz Anton, who's just moved from Perth Glory to Canberra United. Who else is playing? Ellie Green is a left back playing in Denmark at the moment. Or I say playing, but she hasn't actually played yet this season. I don't know exactly what's going on there. These things don't always get reported very well, but there's 4 players right there, plus Ellie Riley, plus whoever else might be pushing through. Like you can't even fit all those players in a squad, let alone decide who's going to, like, what the pecking order might be. So how do you separate yourself from the crowd? Well, you just got to show a little bit more ambition. You got to take a bit of a risk and try get to a higher level and just like set yourself above that way. And so that's a nice ambitious move from Michaela Foster, if indeed something like that comes to pass, and we'll see where she potentially ends up. But yeah, Auckland United, very good. One other weird factoid from the Under-20, from the Kate Sheppard Cup final, is that neither coach was there. So Ben Bate coaches Auckland United. He is an assistant with the New Zealand Under-16s, who are doing their Oceania qualifying at the moment. And Maya Vink coaches Western Springs, and she is the assistant for the Under-20s squad who were at the World Cup. So neither of the coaches were actually on the sideline. The assistants were taken over for both of those ones. As to the Chatham Cup, where I just mentioned Charlotte Roach did score a banger. It was a great goal, smashed it in from outside the box, late-ish as well. Like, just she had a few chances that she kind of rushed earlier in the game, probably easier chances than the one she scored, but she just waited for the moment. And she's a player who um, she's moved up from Canterbury. I think probably to go to university in Auckland, but I'm not entirely sure. If it might just be footballing reasons. I don't know, but she she's had a knack of the last couple national leagues for scoring crucial goals for Canterbury. So she just seems to be that type of striker. She might miss a few. She might look a little bit off the pace, or maybe like not quite linking up, but then she will just do something awesome and score a very important goal, which is just an outstandingly good trait to have. The Chatham Cup final, Auckland City, Wellington Olympic, the big rivalry now these days. And the thing I love about that rivalry is that because they're from different regions, they only play when it matters. There's no slippery preseason friendlies going on here. There's no secondary cup stuff where no one's really interested, or there's no April league games where maybe their overseas signings haven't arrived, or they're resting their players because early in the season and who really cares. None of that. They play in the National League. They play in the late rounds of the Chatham Cup, because I think it's only from the quarters onwards where you play teams outside your region anyway, in the Chatham Cup as well, where they start combining them just to make sure people aren't... You got to respect the travel expectations of teams there. They play in Oceania Champions League qualifiers as well. Big games, lots on the line every time they meet, and they're the two best teams in the country. And Wellington Olympic have probably, after winning the last National League, after they did lose the Oceania Champions League stuff to them at the start of the year, but after winning the last National League, winning the Chatham Cup final here, they've probably put themselves just a step, maybe even only half a step, but ahead of Auckland City in terms of recent performances, recent outcomes, current quality leading into the next National League. But I mean, it was just a heavyweight clash in all regards in that game, and you got a bunch of players who everyone will know and recognize who've been following these. Core players from Auckland City, core players from Wellington Olympic, just out there doing battle as they have so many times over the last couple of years. And yeah, went all the way down to penalties. And the reason it went to penalties is because of a bloke called Stipe Ukich from Auckland City, who was the youngest player in the game, scored a 95th minute, 5th minute of added time equalizer for Auckland City to force extras. He hit the post during extra time. He had a header, also cleared off the line. He's a speedy winger who could take on defenders and, chucking a step over here or there, get past, running behind. But his three best chances in this game were headers. And that sort of, I'd watched him play a fair bit for the under 17s, I think, earlier this year, and Oceania stuff. Might have been the under 19s. It would have been the under 19s and World Cup qualifying there. And yeah, I saw the speedy winger, the goal scoring type aspect. I didn't necessarily get a gauge on how. I think he's bigger than he looks. He's stronger than he looks. He's apparently just he's good in the air. He won the Jack Batty Memorial Cup thing for the best player in the final, despite being on the losing team. Although admittedly it was a draw and to have to be separated by penalties. He did score in the shootout as well, so nerves of steel as well, despite being the youngest bloke on the field. You remember last year when Ella Jerez used the Kate Sheppard Cup final as sort of like a stage to announce herself and say, "Learn my name. I'm one of the best prospects in the country." Stipe Ukich did that for Auckland City in this Chatham Cup final this year. Like, he was the young player of these two finals who was like, if you didn't know me before, you know me now, and you probably want to remember my name. He has been linked to Auckland FC earlier in their sort of recruitment process, but it sounds like he probably rebuffed them because being from Auckland City, you won't be surprised to hear he's got some Balkans kind of Mediterranean heritage. I think the name Stipe Ukich also lends itself towards Croatian. Yeah. So it sounds like he's probably going to go, when he turns 18 in January, he will go and have I think he's already done some trials, and he might go back and sign. You can't it's hard to sign professional deals before you're 18, but once you're 18, you got a little bit more control over matters there. So I think that's what's going to happen. He's not going to sign with Auckland FC. He's going to go play professionally in Europe. at the start of next year. I'm just really hoping that means he sticks around for the National League. Because there would be a case to say, well, if he's got something sorted already, you don't want to risk an injury, you don't want to play too much or whatever, but also you want to get those reps in New Zealand while you can, just so that you can build that profile and just, stay fit, stay active, get some highlights, boost your reputation. He was fantastic in the Chatham Cup final, and I really hope we see a lot more of him in the National League before he heads off to the Flying Kiwis realms, which feels inevitable at this stage. He is a hell of a player.